power utility, Eskom, has announced that load shedding stage 2 will remain with South Africans for yet another week, especially during evening peak time. Now, South Africa's official opposition recently said it had taken what it called an unprecedented step of asking government to consider putting power utility Eskom under the State of Management Act. This as the utility confirmed today that stage 2 load shedding will be implemented from 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. throughout the week. Now, earlier in the month, the Department of Public Enterprises said government had not considered the state of a law for the electricity provider. Joining us now to discuss this further, and perhaps let's take your views as well on this on 072-110-5584, or otherwise you can tweet us as well at Newzroom 405. We have with us former statistician Dr. Lehohla, energy expert, with us as well. That is Mike Rossouw. We also have Ghaleb, Cachalia, DA Spokesperson of Public Enterprises and CEO of the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, Wayne Duvenhage. Good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. So it's been going on since I suppose the beginning of the month, but we saw it also happening this past weekend. It's been announced again. So we keep on seeing these statements that certainly tell us that there is no power certainty in this country. I suppose another mind says they might as well just tell us that load shedding is here to stay. I mean, you don't necessarily need to be updating us every single day, but I suppose there is merit in that update. Are we at that point where a state of national disaster on energy is inevitable? You know, the president still believes because there's management there, they manage load shedding now and again, we will never get to stage 8, so we are still okay. Ghaleb, Cachalia, let's begin with you.
Thank you very much. Look, it's not a matter of 1 month. We've been progressing here for 14 to 15 years. We are now at a position where we are able to receive from Eskom a 1-hour warning that says you will go from this stage to that stage, from stage 1 to stage 2 to 4 to 6 or to stage 8. And that is the current position we're in. We have an immense problem on our hands. Our economy is flatlining, and this industry, this lifeblood that electricity provides is what fuels the economy. Without it, you don't have an economy. Now we have an immense problem here. We need to fix this, and there is a head in the sand attitude here which says we will fix this. Don't worry, trust me. I'm a doctor. I'm doing the right thing, and we just limp from disaster to disaster. So that's why we're saying let's in the interests of the country, in a non-partisan way, call for a state of disaster to be declared. You know, and for in parallel a state, a commission of an urgent commission of inquiry to be instituted, so that experts can sit down and say, the independent experts, not the orchestration of government for particular reasons, not those who have to answer to the unions who are asking for a 15% pay hike in Eskom. Not those who have cadre deployed people who are doing nothing in particular. Not those who have been responsible for those cadres who have stolen in huge industrial fashion from this entity.
Yeah.
And those who have brought us to where we are. That is what we need to do now. And if we don't, the lights are going to dim and we will sit here in darkness.
Thank you very much for those opening remarks, Dr. Lehohla. What has led us to entertain these 2 hours of darkness that happen periodically? What are the components that are contesting here that say to us, look, it's okay, we are not yet at stage 8, so let's bear stage 2, because it shows that management is at least working and repairing whatever breakdown we're experiencing in somewhat record time?
Well, let me just deviate a bit in order that I can swallow this bitter pill. I was in Nigeria, in Kaduna, and every floor there was a generator. At the time, I didn't think that we'll have generators blaring in South Africa. They are. and we know that we have sleepless nights. I think this is disingenuous to even start saying that we are not in a crisis. We are in a deep crisis. And it's not a matter of whether it's 2 or 8 or anything. The fact that in an integrated system, one person not accessing means that he doesn't access the other 8 or the other 10. So the impact is exponential. And if we don't understand the laws of motion of economics and it's interconnected across, right now, if one of us were in load shedding, we wouldn't be connecting with you. So it means that we can't connect. So I don't know what a state of disaster means to the government. This is a deep state of disaster. The economy is not growing. I mean, energy and production is about molten. You melt something all the time. If in the middle of melting something, and there's no electricity and it freezes in the mold, it means the production is wasted. And if we don't understand those processes of energy being heat all the time and molten being the product, then we actually don't know what we are managing as a government. It's a serious problem. And trying to say stage 8 is too far from stage 2, it's a false statement. Because the impact is exponential. It's not a linear one, it's exponential.
Mike Rossouw, let's bring you in. What is the real prospect of stage 8 load shedding, and would it be too late if we say, okay, then let's act now, let's get into a state of national disaster when we are at stage 8?
Well, look, I agree with the previous speakers in many respects, except that to declare a national disaster, I think, is unnecessary because government have been neglect. Let's just acknowledge that government have been totally neglect of this problem of Eskom. Eskom management and Eskom board have been totally neglect of this problem. So the solution is simple, very simple. Eskom needs to be called to account by government and to say to them, look, explain to us what the hell's going on. And quite frankly, I think Eskom and their management and the executives have not a clue what's going on. They can't predict whether they're going to produce 1 or 2 or 3, 4, whatever megawatts the next day or the next hour. So the problem is simple. To declare national disaster is unnecessary because we've seen so much wasted time of inquiries and boards and what. That's not going to help. What has to help is Eskom has to be brought to account, and I do agree with the previous speakers. We need independent, very independent experts to tell Eskom and the executive what the hell is actually going on because they don't know.
Well, Duvenhage, is it only a disaster when the grid collapses, or are we already in a disaster?
We're in a disaster. We're in a total disaster. Eskom is in a disaster.
All right, but let's let Wayne come in there.
Look, I think we're in a crisis. I don't think we're at the stage of declaring a disaster. Our concerns is that when government declares a disaster of this nature, it gives them immense powers. And what that starts to mean for us as a civil action organization is that bad decisions can happen, such as bringing the car power ships into our harbors at 5 times the price. I think the problem we have today is as a result of years of trying to keep this monopolistic approach, this ideological approach that Eskom must control everything. Had we have gone down the road of renewables a decade ago, we wouldn't be in this state. So I don't think it's a case of we don't know what's happening. What is happening is that there are aging plants that are breaking down. We are having to take Kuberg offline, and we have sabotage that's happening. It's very clear as to what's happening. So we're in a precarious position. We have 60% of load availability factor, where we had just 3-4 years ago over 80%, and that's as a result of very poor planning. And as we know, Medupi, one of its units has gone down. So it's not like we don't know. Sure, we can bring in additional expertise. But this team is not as if they don't understand or know what's happening. We have a crisis here, but don't go into the space of declaring a disaster.
Can we, though, Wayne, then accelerate the implementation and the connection of these projects and these things that we are trying to do into the grid in time? Because as Dr. Lehohla says, the more time we are spending in these stages, we might as well count the impact on the economy as we are already in stage 8, which is an absolute disaster.
Now, I don't think we're in stage 8. We're in a precarious position. I think if we move fast, because every year that goes by and we don't make these decisions, we haven't even updated our IRP. We need to move fast to get renewables into this country, battery storage if we need to, really think out the box and start to reduce our dependence on Eskom. We should have done a lot more a long time ago, but if we move fast now and we get our maintenance right, we can get through this. But we are, no doubt, in a crisis, but we should not be declaring a state of disaster.
Ghaleb, Cachalia, I'm coming to you. I know you want to jump in here. Have you thought about it, the Democratic Alliance, the amount of power that you will be giving to government when you declare the state of national disaster, and the possibility that it could triple, even put the price at 5 times the current prices we are paying?
I understand Wayne's concerns completely, and I share them. However, let me say that we are facing disaster here, and the role of government and those who hold government to account is to make sure that we are proactive rather than reactive. Because when disaster hits you, then you have to pick up the pieces. In advance of that, you can ensure that things don't fall apart. Now, what is absolutely necessary is that if a state of disaster is called for, is that an independent commission of inquiry, independent, needs to hold that state of disaster, the elements of that state of disaster, to account and to ensure and to inform it and to ensure that we go along the right direction. Now, you know what? We are fed this story that we have a generation shortfall, but we have 17,000 megawatts that are currently inoperative, that are not available because they need to be brought online. Surely what you need to do is fix that. We told the shortfall to fix this country is 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts. If you have to fix within your existing capability 17,000 megawatts, that can solve that to a large degree. Now, we're not the only country in the world with aging power plants. For God's sake, it's all over the world. Fix those things and understand why we are not being allowed to fix it. What is being hidden? That's why a commission of inquiry is incredibly important, because what is being hidden that says that prevents us from doing that. And yes, in parallel, do all the independent power producers, the alternative energies that you can bring to bear, because that may well be the future. However, we are talking about a current crisis here, and that current crisis needs to be addressed. Now, if you bring 10,000 megawatts, which is a hell of a lot of megawatts of alternative energy onto the grid, you'll only have it for 8 or 9 hours a day while the sun shines and the wind blows. You need to secure the base load in parallel underneath that. And if you don't do that, then we are in trouble. And you have 17,000 there to fix. Now, that's what you need to do, and you need to do the others in parallel. And it must be done now. And we need experts. I'm not an expert. I can drive experts to the table. I can say there are a number of people, and you'll have all kinds of people. You have people vested interests from the renewable sector, vested people from the coal sector, from the nuclear sector. All of these exist. However, let's address this and let's take it forward and understand what we need to do before the lights go out. Lights have gone out in many parts of the world. They went out in California. Now there's a permanent commission of inquiry in California that sits and deals with this, and it's independent, and they've not had a problem since. We need storage. Let me finish by just saying, if you talk about renewables, you need storage. You need gigawatts of storage to sort this out. Elon Musk was the only person in Australia in what he did there to bring significant storage on board. And it was minuscule. It was, what was it, 80 megawatts of storage. We need gigawatts if we to plug this here. And we don't have that. So let us fix what we have. Let's put stuff in parallel to ensure that we get there to fix it. And let's have an independent eye on this. Because government is not independent. And they have led us here. They have led us to this parlous place over many, many years.
Dr. Lehohla, what's being hidden from us about what is preventing us from fixing what is there that has led Scopa and the board member to be in a mother of all wars?
I think one question I would ask, which is useless anyway, and I don't think there'll be an answer, is why did we have 3 boards? And I think once you create 3 boards in the middle of a crisis, you are creating bureaucracy, and those 3 bureaucracies are going to fight. Even if the writer was the best, I don't see how he supervises 3 entities all at the same time. What we need to do is to focus on getting the old plants to run. You don't need to go and sell your old car to buy a new car that you can't afford, when your old one can run and then run to the end, while you plan how you go and buy a new car. These plants should be able to run another 3 years. I think there's an overwhelming statement that they are too old. They run. Get the coal in there and they run and maintain them, at least for another 3-4 years. They haven't come to a standstill. And I don't think when you don't have engineers, that's a problem. When you actually are chasing people around and crying sabotage, you are demoralizing them. They cannot run because they are looking at the back. And this thing requires leadership. In the time of crisis, you need leadership that imbues confidence in the people, mobilizes the forces. And once you do that, people fall in line. I don't think we have that. All the time, it's a lie after a lie that Eskom is right, we are going to... That's a lie. The evidence we see is not what we are told. And we are being taken for a ride as society. I mean, a report or an announcement that in an hour we don't have electricity, it's very, very, very disruptive to any business. And nobody can come to South Africa under those circumstances to come and invest. Yeah. So we really have to really, really deal with this matter very, very professionally and stop the spin and the lies.
Is this a failure in the approach of the policymakers and the regulators, or is the failure elsewhere here? Dr. Lehohla?
I do not know. Eskom used to work, and it was run by engineers. And government started going in there. And then the boards didn't have engineers and the like. I think that's a major, major, major problem. You've got to leave the engineers to do the work, and then leave them to do the work and hold them to account. Once you bring people who are not engineers in the system, and at the highest level, who actually receive reports that they cannot read, it's a big problem. You cannot have a hospital run by a person who is not a doctor. I mean, we have been infused into this Harvard kind of thinking that management and management, leadership is leadership. No, no, no. We are not manufacturing gadgets here or these kinds of things, wedges. We are actually working with a very complex system that can only be understood by engineers. And you don't just put a manager because he's a manager or a leader there. You've got to have somebody who is vested in the technicalities of the work. Otherwise, you'll make big mistakes.
You're back with us tonight here in Focus. Former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla is with us, DA Spokesperson on Public Enterprises, Ghaleb Cachalia, CEO of Outer Wayne Duvenhage, and energy expert Mike Rossouw, who is with us. Mike, let's bring you back in here. Can we accelerate the implementation of the fixing and the connection of what we have? Right? We keep on hearing this 15,000 megawatt of capacity that is unavailable to breakdowns. That is unplanned. But then again, we hear of this 3,000 odd megawatt that keeps on coming up, which is planned. No one is ever telling us when are we getting this 15,000 like actually back on and properly working. And what is it that's keeping us from getting this 15,000 back? Is it budget? What is the challenge? Or is that 15,000 really should be discounted? It will never come back.
The answer is very simple. Firstly, the discussion is about capacity. It's got nothing to do with capacity. Eskom have a surplus of capacity. What they don't have is available capacity. And the reason is because they are failing to understand a simple fact. Eskom do not have the resources, manpower or time to return the megawatts that they have under their control to available capacity. So the answer is very, 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 very simple. They have to redirect the people, the manpower and everything at the smaller plants to the bigger plants where the megawatts do exist. Now, just to put it into context, in the smaller plants, the units are like 100 or 200 megawatts each. Do you know that in the large plants, the megawatts per unit is 700 plus? So one unit of a new, and the larger plants, displaces a whole old power plant. Yet they waste time, waste resources that they don't have, or the money, or the time on those smaller units. They have to focus on the large plants, and in that way we will return the megawatts, available megawatts, to the country.
Wayne, do we have the timeline in place to do these things? Do we have the time? Do we have the resources? Is there a sign that we are reprioritizing the budget into the right things of fixing what we already have that is capacity that is not available?
Yeah, look, I think Mike hits the nail on the head. The capacity is there, but it's the availability factor that's low. And, you know, Eskom has thrown people at the problem in the last 12 years or so. They've gone from 32,000 to 45,000, nearly a 50% increase in heads, without a single gigawatt additional energy in that period. So their productivity has gone down. They're wasting a lot of money on heads that should never have been there in the first place. And if you go back 12 years ago, everything was fine. They had the good engineers. So this is about getting the engineers back. And as we heard a little while ago, a lot of engineers said they would give their time. They've gone into retirement. The engineers, the engineers overseas that will come here. So we need to put the manpower resources back to where we need them to keep those plants available. The problem, though, is that, you know, it's not just about old plants because, I mean, you're quite right. Earlier speaker was talking about that you can run old plants so long as you maintain them. These plants were not maintained for a very long time. So they're very precarious. They trip and they go down quickly, while you also have to take old plants offline for some time. I mean, the 900 or the just below 1 megawatt of energy from Kluberg's going to be running at half its capacity for the next 2 years. That's a lot of power when you're running in a very tight situation like this. So we need the manpower, the resources. We don't need a disaster state or declare a disaster here. We know what's wrong. We need to get heads together. We need to get a coalition and a collaborative approach of people who can fix this problem, working with the team at Eskom, getting all the big metros, getting all the big users of energy together and find the solution. And we need to do so very quickly. And at the same time, start to devolve our hoarding of the power control in Eskom and get the renewables on board, because renewables is not just about when the sun is shining, the wind's blowing. California is over 90% of renewables, largely as a result of solar and wind, by the way, largely, not all of it. Yeah. They've got hydro, they've got geothermal as well. But we can start alleviating this problem. And all the models show that had we gone down this road 5 years ago, we would not be in the situation we're in today. And we still procrastinate. So we need our IRP updated. We need to bring renewables on board. And I can assure you that we will start to move in the right direction.
How do we solve the battery problem, though?
The battery problem. Yeah, look, I mean, it's not all about storage. It's about reducing the need and the load on the coal-fired and the base plants during the day while you have renewables running, and then bring that back on. I mean, there's a science here, and Mike and the specialists will know. I just do know that when you're floundering at about 7% of your energy and renewables, and many countries in the world are at 50, something is wrong. Something is wrong here when we're languishing where we are. So we need to get that right.
Yeah. Mike, is there any evidence or proof that the current renewables that we have actually been put into the grid and they're actually helping us and assisting us in any way that we should maybe focus and bring in more?
Yes, look, I agree with the previous speakers. Look, there's a big fallacy and a misunderstanding in regards to renewables. And the appropriate word that they use, which is a correct word, is intermittent. In other words, it's not available. It's intermittent, i.e. the sun and the wind and so on. That's actually BS, because the batteries have come into their own. I mean, I've put in batteries in my house. I can afford it, and I put it in, and I can live with 6 hours without load shedding. Now, Australia, America are all installing in batteries. It's lithium-ion batteries, and these things work perfectly. So with PV cells and batteries, we can displace a whole host of Eskom generation. I agree that we need the base power. We do need that. But the point is, we can start displacing it. And by the way, this is much cheaper than any new coal. Any new coal whatsoever can be displaced by PV and lithium-ion batteries today. And it's getting cheaper by the day. You know that the price of PV and batteries are coming down leaps and bounds, as I said, to the extent that it now is cheaper than building new coal. Yeah. So I fail to understand where this argument is coming from. We can move forward with PV and batteries, no problem.
Ghaleb, Cachalia, see you scratching your head. We can move forward with batteries, and there's available storage.
You know, what we need here is a whole of society approach. We need to get experts around the table, and we need to understand where we are and where we're going. Now, let me take you back. In 1983, we had a tariff hike in this country in electricity. That the government of the time instituted the De Villiers Commission of Inquiry. The recommendations from the De Villiers Commission of Inquiry led to the installation of Ian McRae's dream team, as it were, that took Eskom to its glory days, after which it went downhill, as we know, over all those other years. However, those people in Ian McRae's team understood fuel construction, testing, commissioning. They understood all the elements that are required. We have, with the greatest respect, a COO at Eskom who comes from the transmission business. We need people in places there who have capacity and understanding of all these elements, who have done that. And they are few and far between. They exist. We need to bring them on board. We need to fix the issues there. We need to take advice from the experts who understand what's going on, and then, having brought them to the table, force government to take action, because the experts have spoken and the levers that are now in place allow you to produce it, to make it implementable. Yeah. That is my thesis, and that's what I want to see happen. And I write it in blood. If we don't do that, we will sit in darkness.
Dr. Lehohla, when you've been in the government machinery for a while, bringing a panel of experts to come and tell bureaucrats what to do? How well is that going to go down?
Well, look, there was time when I was running Statistician, and it was in shambles. I brought the experts around the table. And I said, this organization will run and run. From 2003 to 2005, the experts were on my elbow. We got that organization running. It is still a highlight of my career and the highlight of this country today. Yes. Because of the experts. We had the politicians that understood, Trevor Manuel and the President Beki understood the role of experts. And they had the patience to allow that expertise to come. Eskom needs similar. You cannot run it with politics. You need the experts. They are retired. They are in their 70s. But the next 5 years of their life, I'm sure they'll be very proud to plant back into Eskom and make it run. That's what we need. Because at the moment, even the arguments by ministers are incoherent as to what, and you don't expect them to bring any coherent because they are not experts in the field. But if you prioritize the experts from nuclear, renewables, coal, put them there, and then hold them to account and help them to deliver this thing, they will get us out of this. Otherwise, the precipice is coming, and it's coming, and this country will collapse.
Absolutely.
You've been very critical, particularly about our planning as a country. Do you get a sense that we have a timeline of how to bring solutions to solve this crisis?
If there was, we wouldn't be told 1 hour before their lights off that their lights off. I mean, I go back to Van der Bijl. Van der Bijl had a plan in his head that rolled out into, and he said, steel and energy. And then from steel and energy, he created a base for industrialization and ensured that steel and energy are cheaper so that industrialization happens. Now, without a person with that kind of master plan in their heads, we cannot go anywhere. So we are planning, looking out through the window as to whether there will be load shedding or not. We really cannot. We don't have that. I've been very critical around this, that our planning is in 3-year cycles. There's no 40-year horizon plan that looks at scenarios. Without that kind of thinking, surely we'll always be planning for expenditure, not for results. We'll be planning for expenditure, to spend the money. And planning for expenditure means you are planning for corruption, because everybody's looking at what money they'll get, rather than the results. And the evidence is there, that indeed, when Eskom, Medupi, and so on, people plan for corruption, how much will they get? And there was nobody watching who is expert in how the design of Medupi and all these others are. Now, at the moment, we are really fumbling.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on. Dr. Lehohla, former Statistician-General there, Mike Rossouw, energy expert and former Eskom special advisor, Ghaleb Cachalia, DA spokesperson on public enterprises, as well as Wayne Duvenhage, CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse. We appreciate your time.